Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, a wonderful day to talk about all the short-form literature that exists in the world. Today I want to revisit some short fiction by Philadelphia K. Dick, otherwise known as Philip K. Dick in most circles. He has a short story that is about a secret organization that changes things behind the scenes and the horror that develops in a person when they discover that organization and those changes. I am referring to The Adjustment Team, again by Philip K. Dick. I've talked about Philip before on this channel, highlighted how he was an unusual character. He wrote a lot of short fiction and a lot of longer form novels, that some of which were turned into movies. I talked about We Can Remember It For You Wholesale on this channel before, which was later turned into Total Recall with some changes. Arnold Schwarzenegger was definitely not in the first draft of that story. I'm talking about The Adjustment Team, which was later adapted, I think, in 2011 by someone. It was called The Adjustment Bureau, and it had Matt Damon, and I think Frank Langella, if I'm not mistaken. I'll put something up that verifies whether I'm correct or not. So a lot of his work was used for movies and TV, and a lot of substance to what he's writing about. Often writing about sci-fi and how current technology could be used for good or evil later on down the road. I don't think The Adjustment Team highlights any of that, but it does ask a number of interesting questions, whether intentionally or not. So without further ado, let's talk about The Adjustment Team. I will do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Adjustment Team starts with a clerk and a talking dog discussing the need to wake up a worker in the real world to get them to work on time so they can be part of a sector change, whatever that means. Unfortunately, the dog falls asleep and fails to wake up the worker on time, Ed Fletcher, and so he is late to work. And when he gets to work, he discovers that things are a bit unusual. Some of his coworkers are frozen in time. If he touches them, they turn to dust. Some of the surroundings aren't so solid, and at this point, a mysterious organization shows up and is like, "Hey, he's not frozen. Go get him." But Ed manages to escape, and he returns to his wife and tells her that something very unusual happened at work. She doesn't really believe him. She thinks he's going through some kind of mental break or something like that, but she agrees to go back to his workplace to check it out with him, as a spouse would do. They go to the workplace, and it's nothing like he saw before, but there are noticeable differences that maybe Ruth doesn't notice, but he definitely does. The layout of the office has changed. One of his coworkers' purses is different, and his boss is noticeably younger, raising a lot of questions about why all this happened. Ruth leaves, and then he shortly runs out and runs into a phone booth to call the police, because that's the only thing you can really do in the absurdity of the situation. But before he can call the police, the phone booth he is in lifts off into the sky and heads towards the secret organization. He meets an old man there who's like, "Hey, he shouldn't have known about all of these sector changes and whatnot," and he explains that the reason everything was changed is because his boss needed to be younger so that he would invest in land in Canada, find fossils, and that would somehow unite the scientific community, especially the United States and the Soviet Union, as those two countries were at odds during the time. The old man says that Ed shouldn't know about this, and usually that would mean like extreme measures, but he's going to let Ed off this one time as long as he promises not to tell anyone. Ed then goes home home, and he tries to tell Ruth where he was during the afternoon, but she doesn't believe him. She knows that he's lying about his whereabouts, and so it seems like he's going to have to tell her. But then a dog barks in the background. Once again, the talking dog summoning something, and a vacuum salesman shows up to distract Ruth, thankfully. And Ed says a silent thank you to whatever secret organization is out there. And the story ends on a positive note, but not really, because Ed now knows a great and terrible secret about the world. In terms of analysis, there is a bit to talk about here. It's important to note that Philip K. Dick believed some strange things later in life, specifically that there might have been some great alien race working in the shadows or something like that. And maybe that's what the adjustment team is kind of getting at, kind of hinting at his beliefs, although I can't really verify that, because the man's not alive today. So it's a really bizarre and kind of weird insight into Philip K. Dick's mind. But something that's really interesting about this short story is the horror that Ed Fletcher feels when he realizes that the world is not what he thought it was, that there's a secret group in the shadows changing things ever so slightly. Maybe he's been changed in the past, but this begins when Ed is in when Ed shows up to work late. Like, everything is slightly different. The people turn to dust when they're touched. Everything is frozen in time, except for the secret organization that is doing various changes and whatnot. And Ed feels a very ominous and terrifying feeling as a result of that. There's an interesting passage that I would like to read to you. "And stopped rigid. The sun had winked off. One moment it was beaming down, then it was gone. Ed looked sharply up. Gray clouds swirled above him. Huge, formless clouds. Nothing more. An ominous thick haze that made everything waver and dim. Uneasy chills plucked at him. What was it? He advanced cautiously, feeling his way through the mist. Everything was silent. No sounds, not even the traffic sounds. Ed peered frantically around, trying to see through the rolling haze. No people, no cars, no sun, nothing. The office loomed ahead, ghostly. It was an indistinct gray. He put out his hand uncertainly. A section of the building fell away. It rained down like a torrent of particles, like sand. And so what that is getting at is the uneasy feeling that everything has changed around him. Things are not working the way they should. The clouds are formless. The sun is not doing what it should be doing in the morning. Everything in the office is just not. It doesn't feel natural. Like, everything is dust and sandy, and if you touch the people, they melt away. That doesn't feel normal. That's not how Ed's life has been before this moment. And so what's going on? It doesn't help that, again, the adjustment team people show up and scare him off, and he's forced to flee. When he gets to work later on in the story, everything is slightly off again. His coworker has a different purse than she had before. The office layout is different, and his boss is younger, and this fills him with a large sense of dread that the only recourse he can think of is to call the police, because somebody is changing reality around him. And now imagine if you told that to the police, they would think you were insane. But Ed is telling the truth here, unless this is some weird psyche break that Philip K. Dick is getting at, but I'm sure he's probably not. So what is going on with this secret organization? That is a very good question, and it's causing a lot of fear to develop in Ed that's going to wreck him for the rest of his life, presumably. The story also raises a lot of questions about the nature of free will. Probably Philip K. Dick didn't intend for that to happen, because there's a secret organization that is making a bunch of changes, including making Ed's boss younger so that he'll buy a plot of land down the road. But he wasn't intending to buy a plot of land at the current moment. Once they make him younger and change his entire personality, sure, he'll probably buy that plot of land. But that's like, does that mean his boss's free will is not his own, or that there's no free will in this society, when apparently there's this secret organization that can change anything? Like, you can make one decision, but then if that's not to the secret organization's liking, they can just revert it or change the outcome so that you get a different decision. So it doesn't really seem like there's free will here, but I don't think that Philip K. Dick intended for that question to be risen, but that's what happens as a result. It's very unusual and kind of unsettling. But I suppose you could also apply this to religion, especially Christianity, because God is all powerful. Certainly, He can make it so you behave a certain way or whatever. Something to think about there. And then the last thing I want to talk about is how I don't really like how Philip K. Dick wrote this adjustment team. They're kind of vague, and there's not a lot known about them. Like, why are they making these adjustments? Are they working towards a greater cause? Are they aliens who are trying to guide humanity? Are they gods and angels trying to make certain things happen in the world? Are they just a secret society like the Illuminati trying to affect human events? I don't know, and Philip K. Dick doesn't really care to tell us why all of this is happening. What's even more interesting is that the secret society apparently doesn't have enough power to truly influence outcomes, because the dog in the beginning fell asleep, and when they tried to summon someone to get Ed to work on time, they accidentally summoned a life insurance salesman who made him even later. So they don't really they're not as all powerful as they seem to be. They're even beholden to whatever it is they can summon. A lot of vagueness, and I'm sure that's what Philip K. Dick intended. He wanted it to be vague because that's where the horror comes from. There's a secret society, and you don't know what their ends are. You don't know if they're benevolent or malevolent. So you're gonna fear them, and it's gonna terrify you about what you now know, the secret that you shouldn't have known. So I guess good, but also I kind of wanted to know more. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Adjustment Team by Philip K. Dick. Another quality short story in my opinion, and one that you should seek out. I'm definitely going to recommend it. I didn't like it as much as We Can Remember It For You wholesale, but it was still a pretty good short story, and one that raised a lot of important questions that I think we should consider, about free will and whether or not there are invisible, mysterious teams in our own society guiding human progress. Probably not think about for that too long, because if you do, it'll terrify you. But anyways, if you read this before, or if you want to comment on something I said in my review, absolutely do that below in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Let's have a discussion about Philip K. Dick and his interesting short stories. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can get more Philip K. Dick out to the masses. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and Illuminati travels. Farewell.